This is Failing Justice.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Failing Justice podcast. I am your host, as always, Justin Carlson. I'm thankful that each and every one of you are here. I have my not yet co-host, but buddy, Preston Green.
Yeah, we're working towards it.
Yeah, we're working towards it. Welcome to the show. Thank you guys for tuning in. I had a buddy of mine text me, Mike Miller. Man, I don't know if you're watching, but I'm going to call you out. He texted me and said, you're going live slap dab right in the middle of Game 5 of the World Series where the Texas Rangers are probably going to, win it all. And I said, I know. I've been following this. Preston hates it when I talk about sports because he don't know diddly squat about sports. But
none of it.
My Astros lost, and by default, I guess I was going for the Rangers or whatever, but I've been following this series, the postseason, all of it, very intently. But even though it was a joke, all jokes aside, in seriousness, I think this conversation is way more important than Game 5 of the World Series, which is why I'm willing to miss it. I'll catch the highlights after this, but I'm excited for tonight. I'm excited for the show that we have on air tonight. I have a very special guest that I'm honored to bring in here tonight. I have Tyrone Day with me.
Thank you.
Tyrone Day is he's a native of Dallas, and he's here tonight to share his story, which I think is extremely incredible. I met Tyrone through Richard Miles, which all of you know Richard Miles was on my podcast several weeks ago, and which is how I ended up meeting Tyrone. And so thank you for being here tonight, man.
Yes, sir.
It means a lot that you're here.
Thank you for the invite. Yes.
And I'm really excited to dive into this conversation because, as always, I think it's very important that we highlight stories like yours, simply because we gotta try, especially as law enforcement, the criminal justice system altogether. I think we have to try and prevent things like that from happening, and that's why I want folks like you on this show because, like we were talking just a few minutes ago off camera, not a lot of law enforcement officers get wrongful conviction, wrongful incarceration training, and so I do have law enforcement who is part of my audience, and I want them to hear these things. So, but no, definitely thank you for coming. I want you to just kind of introduce yourself, give a little bit about your background, pre-incarceration, all that. Just kind of talk a little bit about where you grew up. And we'll kind of just let things flow and go from there, man.
Yes, sir. My name is Tyrone Day. I'm like Carson said, I'm a native Dallas, Texan. Born and raised in South Dallas, basically. Went to school in Dallas. Me and my mom and my siblings, we basically stayed in South Dallas our entire life, and up until I went to prison. I actually grew up in the Fair Park area, right there where I got arrested at. And my dad, he was from a little town called Forney at the time.
Forney, yeah, right down the road.
Yes, and they later on migrated to Crandall. My mom always stayed in Dallas, but she once stayed in Forney too. Of course, that's how she met my dad in Sigleville. I'm the oldest out of my siblings, on my mom's side and my dad's side.
How many?
On my mom's side, it was 4 of us. And I lost a brother right before I got exonerated in April this year. He was a baby boy. And on my dad's side, it's 4 of us, 1 girl, 3 boys. Lost a brother on that side, and I'm the oldest on both sides. My dad is deceased months before I got out, kind of like situation that Richard had.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad died, I think, like 6 months before I came home too. And my dad was in the Air Force as well.
Wow.
Military, yes, yes, he was.
Have some similarities there with Richard. That's kind of neat.
Yes. I kind of went to school in South Dallas. I played football. I love football, so I played football actually in middle school and in high school up until the 10th grade. Then my first child was born, Demetra, and later on started doing other things outside of school. So I had to get a job when she was born. So I went to work and I quit school. It's kind of like then I helped take care of my siblings. I had to babysit a lot because my mom, she worked almost 2 jobs. She had a part-time job and she had a full-time job where she done things as a part-time 2 or 3 days a week as well. But I had to be the one to stay around to do the babysitting, looking after my siblings. I pretty much grew up in South Dallas. Basically working here and there at little stores in South Dallas. I used to do a lot of things at the neighborhood stores in South Dallas, stocking the boxes and with the sodas and all that little stuff like that. Done a lot of farming with my grandmother when I did go to Sigerville. I used to leave Dallas and go to, Crandall, a town called Crandall, Texas, and I learned farming from my grandmother. So I love farming.
You know, I'm from Tyler.
Oh, really?
And so, Tyler's pretty close to Crandall. So,
Right. Not that far.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yes. So I was raised up in South Dallas, like I say, and a lot of crime. I was raised up around a bunch of crime in South Dallas. But my mother, basically, she taught us the principles and values of life as a youth and as a child. And things that we faced every day right now is the things that we faced back then. The children in the community where you live by what you see, and pretty much if you're not grounded or not, I come from a single parent household.
Yeah.
So my mom, she put the principles out there, what have you, but the community almost near fit to raise the youth in that community. They see what they see and they use that, and they to learn behavior. Coming on to, if it's not drinking alcohol, smoking marijuana, to doing drugs, to selling drugs. And not to say that all bad things come out of South Dallas.
Right.
Because we had some good examples in South Dallas. And we got some good history in South Dallas. My farm is in South Dallas.
You think it's hard though? Like, do you think it's like if you're in that area and if that's what you grow up around and you see, do you think is it difficult? You think?
I think it can be difficult if you don't have the correct guidance.
Yeah.
It starts in the home.
Yep.
Yeah, it starts in the home. And I say it starts in the home because I got what I got from my mom in my home. And when I say that right there, I think there's more opportunity for youth in South Dallas now. I mean, there's more things to do, even though they still have those same facilities as far as the YMCAs, which is going to get better. The swimming pools and the community centers or what have you. They're building around, upgrading those particular facilities for the children. And then and there are not very many schools is coming up like it used to be. A lot of the schools that was there when I was growing up basically are turned into something else now. And we was bust out, but it's still a lot of opportunity there. And it's redeveloping South Dallas in general. The Fair Park area is there's some good things happening there now. They redeveloping as far as the residential and the commercial property in South Dallas. South Dallas has a great potential.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yes.
And I agree with you. I do think that it starts within the home anywhere you are.
Yes.
And it's hard, if kids have both parents or even one parent, I think they can consider themselves blessed, and it sounds like your mom taught. Is she still living now?
Yes, she's still living now. And the reason why I say that is because I'll be kind of like proactive in what goes on in South Dallas.
Sounds like you're very up to date, and
Yes.
and I was that I assumed with all the information you just gave that you were still actively involved in what was going on over there, and I think
Yes.
that's pretty cool.
Yes. Actually, I'm a co-founder of Restorative Farms, which is in South Dallas, and I don't like to put it like South Dallas is just a food desert, but we're coping with food insecurities in South Dallas, and we coping with the situation of making provisions to provide healthier produce and viable and sustainable gardens and how would you say meals in South Dallas for people who can't actually afford those particular contents of what they want to eat as far as a diet to make them more healthier. You know, they need the substances out of the vegetables that's being grown, not the vegetables that's grown 2,000 miles away and brought into Dallas or to the, how would you say, the fiestas or what have you. And they travel miles with those vegetables. When they get there, the content is not what it is. So we're teaching people in South Dallas and abroad to grow in your own backyard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, man, I'll be honest with you. With today's world, I mean, you see that stuff going on in Israel, and we just, it's like, it's so scary. You don't know what's going to happen. And I feel like having that in your backyard and teaching people and being able to do that, I mean, number one, it's probably healthier because you don't have all the chemicals and crap getting sprayed on the food. But, I mean, just in today's culture and world, you just don't know what's going to, you know.
Because we experienced, it was dramatic during the time of COVID.
Yeah.
When COVID, hit the States like it did. I think everyone can agree that it was a lot of fear put in the lives of people who was not actually the unfortunate one, but the fortunate ones as well. I mean, because when you go into the grocery store, there was nothing there. That very little substance.
That's scary.
There was no trucks driving. There was limited on truck driving. There was limited on import with the trains. Everything was just going as soon as they put it on the shelf.
Yeah.
And people was just sick, and they just wasn't able to move to make provisions to get that, items or food items to these stores. Even medicine was scarce. It was kind of like, and the hospitals was like bombarded and crowded with people. So you just mentioned what was happening over there with the war or what have you. I think that's the similitude, almost a similitude to what happened during COVID. Like you say, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of the situation.
That's awesome, man. I think that's pretty cool that you're involved doing that. And go ahead.
Excuse me. So, just kind of listening to all that, you talk about community, relating it to your childhood, and, me just now meeting you, it sounds like, would you say that your community and the people that you were around when you were younger, impacted you and played an important role in your childhood and your upbringing?
Yes, I can say that because I pretty much had to be as well as the man of my house, as the older sibling, the protector of my siblings and our home. Of course, my mom. She's a female, but my mom was pretty sturdy.
Yeah.
She was pretty tough when it comes to her children and her home. And I have a big family, so here in Dallas. So basically, we stuck together. And I mean, whatever projects I stayed in with my mom, my cousins and all them stayed there. So and we made do with what we had as far as uncles and the peers that was put in front of us as far as family. We chose them well as far as who we follow, who we instituted as far as the lifestyle. Coming from those particular elders in the family, or the aunties that's 5 years older than me or what have you, 10 years older than me. I mean, we pretty much picked our poison when it came to who we would follow. And I had some pretty good ones in my family because they would tell you whether you like it or not. And even some of my coaches in football, James Madison High School, even I can remember when I was in junior high school, I had a coach named Coach Reed, and he wasn't from Dallas, but he was familiar with our situation because there was a thing where a lot of the schools in South Dallas, when they closed them down, they start busing us out of South Dallas and we used to literally call it the white side because really none of our schools, and it goes deep because the tax rate over there wouldn't allow the schools to operate like they did because there wasn't enough tax revenue coming in, and they would shut the schools down and bust us out. Just like now we have schools sitting dormant in South Dallas that, there's not enough money, they say, in the city, in that particular zip code, to be able to get those schools up to par or make them more than one elementary or two elementary schools that's in South Dallas.
That's just so crazy to me, man. Just hearing that kind of here we are giving millions and billions to other places, man, and like we have, like literally in our own country, in our own backyard, we're not taking care of our own people.
Right.
And it's sad to hear that, you say there's buildings that are just dormant over there. And I mean, it's like, you're already setting these people behind the 8 ball, these kids behind the 8 ball, if you're shutting down their schools and not giving them,
Right.
Golly.
And then they have to meet us. They have to, it's a certain expectation that you got to meet. It's a certain criteria you have to meet to go to some of the schools that's outside of the area. You know what I'm saying? And when you have children that's coming in with a single parent that's working 8 to 10 hours a day, I mean, when she gets in or he gets in, they pretty much is tired and worn out, where they can't help this child with the homework or the schoolwork or practice with them or do different type, participate in a little homework and things of that nature there because they're worn out, And I can remember when my mom she did take time to do that. I can remember when I was in kindergarten and my mom worked at Old Wise Cafeteria back in the days. And I was 5 years old. And my mom gave me that big pencil about the size of
the big fat pencil.
Yeah, and she want me to write my name. And I think I sit at that table for about 5 hours that day and got spanked every time I got it wrong until I got the T right and the E right,
Sound like you had a good mama then.
Yeah.
It sound like you had a good mama.
Yeah, so I would sit there and she would make sure that we did that. And it become a practice that, that you had to have your lessons done. She called it lesson. You got to do your lessons before you can do other things.
So when hearing that, it's so crazy. My parents never said that, but my grandma, she always said, get your lessons done. Get your lessons done.
Yeah, you got to get your lessons done. And, South Dallas is when you say South Dallas, I mean, some people say Pleasant Grove and South Dallas, whatever, but I'm talking about South Dallas.
Yeah.
The state, what the state for our Texas is. And I think it's a lot better. And I think in the way they're doing it now, I mean, you raise the bar, and you condition the mind and the hearts of the people when you start surrounding them around a lot of things that's coming about there, like a lot of people say they like to see a Starbucks in South Dallas. We don't have a QT in South Dallas. We don't have a Super Walmart in South Dallas. We don't have a Taco Bell in South Dallas. We just not coming on the rise on a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's a lot of things that we would like to have, but if you have people that gonna continue to do what they do and come about and damage the things that's there while the people building along the way, it causes doubt within the city of Dallas, within
there's a stigma attached to it.
Yeah, so when you get to doing, I think it's getting better.
Yeah,
So
going up through, now I haven't had the pleasure of when I sit down with Richard. I had heard his presentation of his story, and I'll tell you, just like I told him when he came on the podcast, I want you to start with your story, like that very fateful day. Was it 89?
1989.
89.
Yeah.
Talk about that day from the time you got up, and I want you to tell that story just the way you tell it.
All right.
Your words. Start there.
Okay, yeah. See, I was basically at the time.
How old are you? How old were you?
How old I was at the time?
Yeah,
at my arrest, I was 19.
19. That's what I thought.
Same
okay.
age Richard was.
Yeah, same age. 19.
Similarities.
Yes, I was 19.
Yeah,
years
man, that's
old.
so strange.
So, and I was listening. Me and my wife were listening to y'all podcast the other day. I think it was 2 or 3 days ago. We was listening to you and Richard on the podcast, and I was listening to the similarities with his daddy was in the Air Force. My daddy was in the Air Force. His father died 6 months before he came home. My daddy died. I mean, I think Richard said 6 months.
Yeah.
Before, and my dad died like
both 19.
6 months before I got home. Yes.
That's so strange.
And we was on Cofield together.
Yeah.
I left and took a college course and came back. And when I came back, Richard had left and came to Dallas and got exonerated. Like I was telling him, I said, well, a lot of the guys that's from Dallas that got exonerated was on Cofield.
And I worked for Palestine PD there in Anderson County.
Anderson County.
One of the most corrupt counties I've ever in my life been a part of. So I know all. I know all about Cofield.
Yeah.
Man, I can't tell you how many prison guards we arrested.
Oh yeah.
That were doing a bunch of shady stuff. So I know all about Cofield, man.
Right. This is one of the biggest.
So you were 19.
Yeah, I was 19 years old. And they got my case listed as October the 24th, 1989. But I was arrested October the 23rd, 1989. I was had a good day at work. Of course, I was working then because I had some legal things going on with me. Then I was trying to afford. I had 2 daughters, Demetra Casey and Tyrone LaShawn.
How old were they?
They was actually, Demetra was 3, going on 4, and Tyrone was like 1.5, almost 2 years old. And I was working for T&T Roofing at the time, and I was staying with a friend girl named Jean Austin in South Dallas. And I left her house. I stayed with her. I left her house. When the crime happened, I had to be in her house. Because when I left her house and went down the street, which is crossing the alley, going over to, from Maryland to Jeffries, not even like 50 feet, another street. I went down that street when at the time I had some partners that stayed down the street there. And we used to drink, bootleg beer out because it's kind of like getting after hours. Of course, it was 11 o'clock at night. And I can't remember going there and nobody answered the door, what have you. And none of my friends were out.
And what time was it?
It's probably about 11:20, almost 11:30 at night.
Not dark.
And so I come back up the street, going back to my friend Jean Austin house. So in between these times right here is like, it's going on 12 o'clock at night. So I was arrested right at probably about 11, almost 11:40 something, 11:50 something.
How was that encounter? When you say you're arrested, like what? Like
I was walking, just walking.
Just walking,
And
just like Richard was.
And I can remember my hat. Yeah, I was just like Richard. When I was just walking, I can remember my hat. And my hat had LA on it. I can remember the hat.
Like the Dodgers?
Yeah, it was a baseball hat.
I'm a big Dodgers
It was a
fan.
baseball hat.
Yeah.
And I can remember wearing that hat, and I can remember coming down, because I kept my hat white. And I washed my hat and washed my clothes all the time. I can remember walking back up Jeffrey, and I can remember an ambulance right before you cross the tracks. Right before you cross the tracks on Jeffrey. I'm looking, and I'm saying, man, they got an ambulance down there. They got some police cars down there. I'm walking to see what was going on. The officers leave the ambulance and come drive as I was crossing the track, they stopped in front of me. Put the cup, told me to put my hands on the car. I never will forget. I put my hands on the car. They put the cups on me, and they put me in the car. And at this time, here I'm saying, well, what's going on? You know, I haven't done anything. What's going on? We'll tell you what's going on after a while. So they put me in the back of this squad car, and they make a block. It's a street called Myers. And they took me around one time, and they took me around again.
You know exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, okay. So when they did that, I'm saying, well, I haven't harmed nobody or anything like that. And they stopped by the ambulance when they came back the second time. And when they stopped by the ambulance,
having somebody take a peek at you, weren't they?
Yeah, I guess that's what they was. But I'm in the squad car. I never got out, but I never seen the so-called person or the victim who was in this ambulance to say she was sexually assaulted by 3 guys or what have you. I never seen this person. I never seen him. But if they told him to look, I mean, I'm in a squad car and it's had to be after 12 o'clock by then at nighttime. So they took me around again, and go back around to Myers. And my auntie stayed right across the street from these abandoned apartments, right? I went to a friend's house on Jeffries. They pulled me in those apartments, and they stopped right there. A lot of police came, detectives came, and crime scene people came. So by this time, I'm adrenaline. I'm saying, well, what is going on here? Nobody tell me anything.
Not say a word.
Nobody said a word. They didn't tell me what I was being arrested for. They didn't read me my rights. They didn't tell me anything of the fact to the effect like you being arrested for whatever. I'm just sitting there in handcuffs. So when they got through doing what they was doing, and I remember they went to an apartment downstairs because they had the place lit up. So I'm looking, I'm saying, ain't nobody gonna come tell me what's going on. You know, I'm 19 years old, and I'm kind of like
freaking out. I'm sure.
I'm freaking out. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I hope they ain't finna set me up, because that was the thing about South Dallas. That was the thing about my name back then. I have a history in South Dallas, so I mean, I used to be like drug dealer back in the days or what have you. And when I was young, I tried to peddle the
youngster.
Drugs. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the things about that kind of, are they setting me up for something that I ain't doing no more because I'm working now and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, you know. But it was a thing about just the thing that my mom always told me, don't put yourself in a position that you can't get out of. And I haven't done anything. But when they did get through what they was doing in the apartment, I remember them coming out with something in a bag and some evidence, a beer bottle and all this stuff. So I'm saying, what in the? So the officers, they came. I sit there, matter of fact, I sit there for like 2 hours.
In the car?
Yes, in the car for like 2 hours. And one of the officers got in the back with me. I said, could you please tell me what's going on? He said, you being arrested for sexual assault. You know what you done. You and 2 other guys. This woman say 3 guys pulled her in this apartment and sexual assaulted her, took time sexual assaulted her. I said, I haven't sexual assaulted nobody, sir. I was furious, you know, like,
yeah,
what in the heck going on here? I just left my friend girl house where I stay at and walked down the street, and y'all picked me up. I was finna come to the ambulance and see what the commotion was about. Well, the victim identified you, and we got all the evidence against you. So
that's what it was. Like when I knew immediately, because back in the day, I think they do it a little different now because of these reasons. But back in the day, what we used to do is we'd put somebody in the squad car and we'd drive them to the scene,
the crime scene, yes.
And we wouldn't tell the guy in the back seat what we were doing because we didn't want them to make eye contact with the victim, and the victim would be like, hey, we got a car coming up, we're going to roll the window down, or, look back there.
Right.
Do you recognize this person?
Right.
And that's just such a terrible practice, obviously. And so when you told me they drove you around and the stuff, that's to me was exactly what they were doing, especially when you said, they identified you.
Yeah, they said that this female, which was a mute female, they say this female was mute.
Yes, I did read that.
She was a young white lady. I think she was 17 at the time. supposedly had been with a friend girl who identified me as well. I can remember that in the investigation. When they was doing the investigation, that the friend guy was with her, and when the guys got her, the friend guy went one way, and the guys took her and went another way. Uh, I can remember the investigation where is when they did make the loop and come back. I only sit there at the ambulance for like maybe 5 minutes, and they took me back around to the apartment. And we sit there. That's why I say they saved my cases for the 24th of October, but I was arrested on the 23rd.
Before midnight.
Yeah, so it was kind of confusing then, but I mean, it always rolled over because the investigation still was going on what was going on.
So did they take you to Lucerne? Or they get any collect any kind of DNA? Like what? Of course, DNA wasn't a thing back then. No. So
I was a little different than what Richard's situation, where they took me straight to Lucerne. I didn't go before a lineup. I didn't go before nobody, anything of that nature there. But I was furious because, I mean, I know that I had drunk a beer or two that day, but I know I was furious that I didn't want them to take nothing off of me, no hair or nothing like that. But I try to get them to do it so I can get my due process. As far as don't take me for a lineup, DNA test, collect for DNA test. They say, well, she's gonna get a DNA test. She's gonna get a rape kit done, or what have you. So I remember those words, but I was furious, and that stuck with me for years because I knew how Dallas, my uncle, have dealt with Dallas law enforcement, how they would set you up and do things of that nature there. So at the time, I was so furious. I was saying, well, I don't remember them getting anything off me, but I know how they were. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm in handcuffs. I don't know if they got hair off of me or anything. I know I hadn't done nothing to anybody. And at the time, I remember having a colostomy bag on because I had got shot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I remember having that on. And, I mean, I was just furious, man. I never believed that I can just nobody could, just identify me. And in my case today, me and my wife would read it all the time. That white hat, got me. Took 26 years of my life, almost 26 years of my life.
So yeah, talk about the white hat. I mean, one of the actual assailants had a white hat on.
That's what, yeah. And it was so many. I want to back up a little bit because one of the things that actually gets me is that when this victim was carried to the first, they say the victim was carried to hospital. Then they say an interpreter came. She carried to the hospital, and the interpreter came there. A sign language interpreter came there. Then they say it was done at the scene of the crime, where the crime happened at. I never saw an interpreter. And during the time of the initial rape kit taking, they had in the report that the woman said that she identified me and the whole situation that went down or what have you.
Because of the white hat.
Yeah, because of the white hat. But during the investigation, they come to find out that they said those evidence was destroyed. That the sign interpreter said that this woman identified me and told them the whole thing about the whole case, that, this is what happened. But it come to find out during the New York Innocent Project, my attorneys, and I went through a succession of attorneys there, and doing this investigation with Cynthia Garza and them there, that basically a lot of the stuff that was put there was destroyed, but some of the stuff never did exist about the interpretation of the victim saying that she identified.
So all that would boil down to would be, when you say interpretation, that was just because she was deaf. Mm-hmm. That was just her statement.
That's what the police wrote.
Yeah.
That's what they wrote in their report. And they deemed them to be facts in the case to indict me.
But the actual report, the actual interpretation, I've never seen one, so I don't know what that would look like. But so you're saying that was gone.
That was gone. I mean, it was gone.
So everything was just what the police said that said.
Yes. And then there was a lot of contradictions within that. Because you had like six different officers give statements, and all of them contradicted each other.
So did At any point after you went downtown, did you meet with a detective?
No, sir. I wouldn't.
Nobody even came in and asked you a
never
thing?
No, nobody asked me.
Ever?
Anything. No asked me anything.
Were you ever? You were never interviewed?
I never was interviewed. No. Only thing I remember is coming at me with time. That's why District Attorney Cruzo said what he said during my initial exoneration. This case, it should have never been pursued. If you look at the video and the clippings, he's saying that this man should have never been sent to prison. This case was not investigated correctly or properly by his office or by the field officers. It was very much sloppy police work. I mean, they didn't do a tactic, but that was their tactic on what they did, with the paperwork or what have you.
So I saw a black guy with the white hat walking within close proximity of where a crime happened, and next thing you know, you're downtown in Loose Derrick Jail.
Yes.
How much time went by between your arrest and you going downtown and then your trial? Did you I say trial, you didn't have a trial, right?
I didn't have a trial.
So how much time before you were offered the plea deal?
I got there in October, and the plea deal came about in December.
That's quick.
And the thing about that is that I didn't get the plea bargain solidified until after the holidays, which was February. I remember I got my time February the 2nd, 1990, the day that they called me down and do that. And I want to reflect on that because they had this public defender come in there and he tell me about we got all the evidence against you, we got witness against you, which was the girlfriend and some more people, which I don't know how they say they identified me. And then this guy it was 3 guys done the case. Just like Richard's case or whatever, it's 3 guys or what have you. I was the only guy ever arrested on the case.
Yeah, so they never found the other.
They never pursued him, no way. They picked me up and never pursued nobody else that night.
Well, see, what's crazy about that to me, just, because I was a major crimes detective for a while, and just my thought process would be, okay, we have this guy. If we truly think he had something to do with it, right? And that's a whole nother conversation. We could break down of whether they thought you did it, like if they were just ignorant or if, they had malintent behind what they were doing. No matter what that looked like, but if they thought you were the one that did it, I would be in there sitting across from you talking about, hey, who are your boys? Like,
right.
And they just never did that.
They never did that. I mean, I got arrested that night, went into jail, went through the regular process, and I got arraigned, and this was it. No, I never went for a lineup, which I requested, because I know I haven't done anything. I want to give any DNA I can give at the time. I told the officer. They said, well, they'll come and see you. They'll talk to you about it. I mean, I was just stripped out of my clothes, put in the holding cell, arranged, and actually went to the tank. Didn't talk to nobody till about up to December. And then when he did come, he was talking about.
This is your public defender at this point?
Yeah, he was talking about, well, they asking for 99 years and this and that. And I said, 99 years? He said they got all the evidence against you. And me, 19 years old at the time, like, what do they have? They set me up or what's going on? I really didn't know.
You're 19.
Yeah, I really didn't know. I'm from the hard knocks, but when it comes to law enforcement back then, I know the rules that they have. So I'm saying, wow, man, I said 99 years, and that's the part about it that, I tell my wife all the time. I said that's the worst mistake I ever made in my life.
Well, yeah, because reading what I read, especially because the Innocence Project has your. And I wanted to talk to you about that because, and me and Preston talk all the time, with these freaking plea deals.
Yes.
Yep.
It's when, and not all of them, obviously, but to me, you get offered a plea deal and you well know this now. I'm not saying anything you don't know. I'm just talking for the audience. You get offered a plea deal, you take it.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, that was my situation.
Like you can't appeal. All your appeals immediately go out the window. And then the district attorney, they look at that plea deal when it gets accepted. It is a statistic. It becomes a stat now for them as a conviction. They use those stats as convictions, for their funding, for their money that they get,
Right.
for their reelections,
Right.
which I don't know who the DA was at the time, but that's what those plea deals are for. They're just no good.
Right.
Well, I do think that some people would use these plea deals and agreements with ill intent, right? So we can all probably agree on that there is plenty of people in society and then in our profession, law enforcement, and on the the legal process side, the prosecutors, the judges, that are doing the job and performing their duties with ill intent.
Oh yeah,
right? Like everybody has that. Everybody has bad apples. And then I also sit back and I look at the other side or other reasons why we got to where we're using plea deals. Because I can promise you, that probably hasn't changed since when you got arrested and you got offered plea deals like that. I would be, I'd probably be shocked if somebody brought me some statistics and numbers and showed me how many plea offerings people were getting back then and then current day plea offerings, right?
Well, because it's easy. Like they don't have to spend money on a trial. It's easy. It's one and done. Like, hey, here, we want you to do this because we don't have to work.
Mm-hmm.
I do think,
and they scare the hell out of people like him at 19 years old. With, hey, guess what? If you go to trial, you're gonna get 99 years, and you're never getting out. But guess what? If you take this,
right,
then you might see the light of day, and fill in the blank, whatever. And that's how. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, even me right now, if I got sacked up outside, that's a scary thing to face and have to, especially at 19 years old.
Well, yeah, I would definitely agree, and I would say that is, there are people, I'm going somewhere with this. There are prosecutors that use it with that tactic, right? To get the statistics, get the case closed, and move on to the next. They get ambitious in pursuit of a career. We face it all the time on our end of law enforcement, where we don't really care who we have to get out of our way to get somewhere, to get to where we want to be. I'm sure that it's the same within the prosecutor's office on the DA side, that they've got to outdo their partner next to them so that they can get that promotion, or so that they can get out of working as a prosecutor and then get into the private sector. They got to have these numbers and statistics to back it up. I do think that is, that is a majority. It could be a majority of why these plea agreements get offered. But I also think it's become practice and routine, and now it's been going on for it's like, just like we talk about in law enforcement, that has been the practice and procedure for generations. Generations of lawyers have been introduced into that, and say, well, this is how we handle it. If you can check this box, and this box, we move on to offer a plea. If you can't check this box or this box or this box, now we move and we start talking with the public defenders and see if we want to go to trial or what have you. And it's become my question with these it really gets under my skin. these plea agreements. We've talked about it time and time again. I can't wrap my head around how it is constitutional. Like how is it in line with the Constitution if we are a country where our justice system is built on we want to have a justice system and you get to be judged by your peers, right? If we have a jury pool, we have a jury process, we have a grand jury, then why are we not taking every single case to the grand jury?
God.
Why are we? Because it costs time and it costs money.
Yeah.
And somebody's got to overwork, and we don't have enough people that want to do this job for the right reasons, and that's how we end up to where we are today, and that's how we ended. Yours probably, I'm assuming, it's a different time back then. It's different culture. There were a lot of other battles. South Dallas was also probably fighting with the police and law enforcement. That's a whole different culture that I hope that we're getting away from and we're working to get ourselves out of, but I don't necessarily it's probably just a different color lipstick that's been put on the pig now, it's I don't understand. Like I want to know, like, when did it start?
Yeah.
And how is it constitutional? Because to me it's an easy win, but it's at the expense of somebody else. Clearly, right here, we would not be sitting here today talking to you.
Right.
And it's so frustrating to me because, just our few minutes that we've been sitting here chatting and you've told your story, that's my conclusion to this. Like, I do believe that there's horrible mistakes that were probably made in your case on the law enforcement side.
Oh yeah.
But a huge injustice to me is this whole plea. Like, you're 19 years old. You said you already had a history. You said you've already had encounters with law enforcement, with the criminal justice system already. At 19 years old, although you were having to do things that a grown man would have to do and make decisions and take care of your family, how are you supposed to be expected to make the best decision at 19? And it's so easy for them to come in and say you can take 99 and test the waters, or you can take this.
What they offer you, was it 40? What?
Yeah, actually, I ended up taking a plea of 40.
Yeah.
Because it's just like you said earlier, and what you're saying is like the finances was at a minimum.
And you had a public defender who was probably not. I mean, he was probably like encouraging you.
Yeah, he was
to take the deal, right?
Yeah, if he wouldn't encourage me, he wouldn't have came and said, "Well, they're gonna if you don't take, they offering you 99 years. They're gonna try to give you 99 years. So you might well take a plea bargain. Then when you come back and you say, well, they'll plea bargain with you for 40 years, and you'll be out probably 3 years and 9 months because." You get good behavior, you go down here and you take a trade or you do what you got to do to come on back home. And I fed off into that. And then I had 2 younger daughters who I actually wanted to get home to.
Yeah, I mean, you probably had them on your mind.
Yes, they was literally babies, So, and, it was my children. So, me being responsible of what, as a father, as a young father at the time, I wanted to be there for them. So the quicker I can go through the system and get out, which is something I know I could have done, and I did it. So this 3 years and 9 months, turned into 26 years.
So you took the deal.
Yes. And that 4 years that they promised, that this public defender said, well, you'll be home in 4 years, this and that, this and that. I mean, he put some things out there that made you think about that constitute taking that 40-year plea bargain. And I ended that 4 years, I'm going to say 4 years because, I mean, I would have came home, 1/4. So I would have came home in 3 years, 9 months, almost 4 years. That turned into 26 years. And then I done another 8 years out on parole, so that turns almost 33 years,
For a crime you didn't commit.
For a crime I didn't commit. All because I had on a white hat and I was a black guy where a crime was committed, walking on the streets. don't even fit the description of whoever these three guys or what have you. But I supposed to fit the description of one guy, you know. And for years and years, the Innocent Project we done. I mean, I came to Dallas twice. I came in 2008, and I think it was 2012 on bench warrant. I came to Dallas the first time.
I don't want to interrupt you. I want to back up because I want to make sure I got the timeline right in my head.
Mm-hmm.
When did the Innocent Project, like, what was the process with you getting in contact with them? And I assume somebody helped you write a writ. I mean, like, how, like, what? Did the Innocent Project not get in until after you were paroled?
No.
That's what I'm trying to figure out is what the timeline of that was.
2001, I wrote the Innocent Project.
Okay.
I wrote the Innocent Project after.
And this is 10, 11 years in?
Yes. And I've seen the O.J. Simpson case on TV. And I was kind of captioned by DNA in the O.J. Simpson case. Then Barry Scheck ran across my mind with the Benjamin School of Law, New York Innocent Project. So I wrote them, and it took them like a year to give me a response. That was in 2001 when I got the response. I still have the card right now. I showed my wife the card when I wrote them. And here it is. My first thing of going back was in 2008. I went back on bench warrant in 2008 to Dallas County. And this is like 7 years later. I go there and I get a swab. I never will forget, it was me and another exoneree who was exonerated today, Thomas McGowan.
Yeah.
Me and him we came back on bench warrant.
He was at Kell, I believe. Was it Thomas McGowan that was at Kell? No. They told his story at Kell. He wasn't there.
Yeah.
But he was the one out of Richardson.
Garland Richardson.
Yeah.
He got arrested in Garland Richardson. But we came back together, and they took my DNA and done the mouth swab. And my family was kind of geared on me getting out because I know I haven't done anything. So they ran the test, and it came back as that's my case was a real complex case because these three guys that's supposed to have done this case, they was geared on getting 3 DNAs out of this case. Even though, come to find out, the possibility and what they geared on now that there was only 2 people who committed this crime. So I was a ghost to the third person as far as the third, perpetrator in the case. So you look for 3 DNAs all my life, and possibly only 2 people committed the crime because you keep coming up with 2 DNAs and you saying there was a low level of DNA on the third person. I went through series of DNA tests. Maybe the Innocent Project.
Not enough to test.
Not enough to test. They went through like 12 DNA tests out of all the years. And inconclusive. But I was actually telling my family and what have you, my wife, I said, in 2008, when I was excluded, they didn't let me go. They said it was inconclusive. But I actually got it. I was actually excluded in 2008.
It wasn't a match?
It wasn't a match because they looking for something. They said, well, it may have been her boyfriends or what have you, but it wasn't mine. And you know who the 2 other perpetrators was now. You investigated them guys. One of the guys said he wasn't there, but he didn't tie himself into the crime, but he said he wasn't there. How your DNA get there? I don't know, but he wasn't there. And another guy who was in the jailhouse on another case saying, I was there, but I wasn't in the percentage where they was with the woman. This is what the other 2 guys said that actually done the crime. So I never was implemented on the crime. But did you see Tyrone Day do anything while you was there? No, Tyrone Day, he wasn't there in the area at the time.
And then you had DNA to prove that you weren't involved in the crime, and still nothing got done.
Nothing got done.
Why?
Because we go into avoid liability.
Just in case.
Avoid admitting are wrong.
Yeah. So you're right. So I was the character for that.
Yeah.
So I was sent back to prison. I remember we was upstairs. I was sent. They was calling Thomas McGowan name, and he had told me, he said, "Bro, I got exonerated. They cleared me on DNA." But they was calling his name to get on the chain. I said, he ain't going back to TDC. But I was going back that morning, and that hurt me dearly. And I don't have they sent me back, and they called me back again. You know, after I've been excluded in 2008, I'm supposed to be released. You're looking for a third person when it really is not a third person.
And even if there was, they just proved that it wasn't you by DNA, right?
And when they sent it to a specialist, that's what he said. I got the paperwork right today. The specialist said Tyrone Day is excluded from anything as far as DNA, the rape kit, concerning this case. He's excluded. He's not, it's not even a doubt about it. But I still remain in prison for 15 years.
Another 15?
Yeah. After 2008, I was done all the way up. And, after 2008, I stayed in prison another 15 years. I didn't get out to 2015.
That's just
let's see what 20. Yeah, I didn't get out until 2015.
Well,
yeah.
2008 to 2015. So you
8 years. Done
8 years. Okay.
Yeah, 8 years. I done another 8 years in prison.
I got you.
And what I was doing with that is I was stricken. It didn't break me, but
that's what I was gonna ask you, man. Like, I asked Richard the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
What was your? I met some other podcasters in the other studio a minute ago, and I don't know if you heard me, but we kind of just ran at each other, and I was telling them. They were asking, what we were doing, and I was talking to them, and I was telling them how humble you guys are,
right?
Considering what you've gone through,
right?
And the guy in there, he made me laugh because I have to share what he says is, he's like, if that was me, he's like, he didn't do anything. He's like, going to prison, I would have done something because I'd have been pissed.
No.
And so that's like, and that brings me to my question, like, what's your thought process during this time? I mean, are you a believer? Are you on that spiritual level? Like,
well,
what got you through that?
I'm pretty much I'm a spiritual person, but I'm of a different religion. I was taught Islam since I was 13 by my uncle Tommy George, and he started out in the Nation of Islam, which I'm not a part of anymore. I'm a Sunni Muslim. I practice Orthodox Islam, regular Islam. So I always been humble and unique in my disposition when it comes to my conviction, and I always kept faith. And, a lot of my friends are Christians. A lot of my business partners is Christian and Jews, what have you, and they from England and what have you, and we share minds alike, even though we're from different faiths.
Right.
We rub elbows. We brothers.
And believe it or not, we can do that. Unfortunately, like the world says we can't, but we can.
Right. Right. And I don't hold. And a lot of people. I've been asked that for a long time. What type of bitter do I have? Do I hold any bitterness or illness or what have you? And I don't. Because one of the things that I was reflecting on the statement that Richard said when y'all was together doing the podcast is that there's a system that's designed to protect, the citizen of the United States. There's due process put in line. There's things that's coming about. There's laws that's evolving and changing to make the system better, what have you. But the people and the administrative body is the vehicle to make that happen.
Right.
And laws are steady evolving, and I thank God for that. The laws are evolving. And, that's how I got here today, because technology evolved. Because my case had a grace period where it just went like mute for like 5 or 6 years, because technology, they couldn't get technology up the parts to even get that little, organism of DNA, the results of that. I had to wait on technology to keep up, but the instrumental part of that was the human being. They didn't fail me. people evolving, going to school and learning
Right.
how to do this stuff, So it works. So the prime example on how the system could be better and how it works with the administrative body, we just have to have good people in there. We have to have the right people.
That's the thing, man, because anytime you're dealing with humans, as human beings, I always say this, and I think it could apply to anything in this world. If you weren't dealing with humans,
who would you be dealing with?
Like things would probably be okay, but we don't. Obviously, we can't fathom a world where that's not.
I understand.
You have humans are involved in everything,
in everything,
and humans will inevitably make legitimate mistakes. Mm-hmm. But then humans will turn around and make malicious mistakes,
right,
or malicious actions. Mm-hmm. They have ill intent, and we see it all the time. Mm-hmm. And you're right; it literally goes back to having the right people
in the right place,
in the right places. Right. Doing the right things,
right.
For the right reasons.
For the right reasons, because that's what it boils down to.
Yeah. That's why I would go ahead.
And just on a level of being a parent, man, did you keep in contact with your daughters during all these years? Where are you at with that now?
Me and my oldest daughter, we have a great relationship. And I would like to say that my youngest daughter, that we have the best relationship. But at this time, she has some issues with my absence being the absence as a father. Yeah. That she's not able to accept that this happened, okay, and it was a burden to me like it was a burden to you. God brought me through what I had to go through to get this far. So you went through what you went through, but I'm here now to be a father and a friend, and to my grandkids as well. But you can't hold me in contempt for being out of your life because the system failed me.
Because this is all still pretty new, right?
Yes.
Like the official thing didn't come down until May of this year.
Yes. Yeah. So
we're talking 5-6 months ago,
right?
Is when like the world can believe,
it's
that Tyrone Day is innocent.
Yeah, like my oldest daughter said, exactly.
Even while you were on parole,
right?
Even though you were working with the Innocent Projects, even though there was no evidence, even though it was a bunch of crap, you still had to wait until May of 2023 for the world to say, look at Tyrone Day. He is now exonerated. He did not commit this crime. 33 years later.
Yeah. And 15 years later, how would you say after the fact, being on parole and everything, that's 15 years.
Because that parole was...
Yeah, my parole, that was part of this. It was a journey for me and my wife and my children and my family. And my wife and my son, they was the go-to people here recently, because you have to register as a sex offender. You can't stay where you want. I couldn't stay with my wife for a year. I stayed with my uncle. You can't leave the state. It's a lot of things you have to do. You got to register every year, and then you're gonna get a driving license for a certain part of you. Then you got to go to these classes, and it's like, it didn't humiliate me. It didn't define me, because that's not who I were. That's not who I am. But I went to those classes and went through the sex offender classes and listened to these stories, and this stuff is real. Because people are actually doing, all this type of things, online or whatever. This stuff is real. And some people took, like you say, plea bargains because they was put in situations to be registered as a sex offender. I listen to stories like that. Innocent other guys that had to take a plea bargain because of the situation. But I had to go through all of that, and I can stand to say and attest to say that it was a journey because I got arrested twice. In 2022, was it 22? 22. I got arrested for not registering,
God.
and I spent 1 day in jail. I got out on bond on that. Okay, and I contact my attorneys on that. But the last time I got arrested for staying supposedly at my wife's house, and I stayed 21 days in jail and was let out 4 days before Christmas.
And you already knew that, like, it had already been proven.
Well, he was waiting on the
I was
official
waiting on
word.
the process. That's all.
Yeah.
I was waiting on the
Waiting
court of
on the
appeals.
process.
Oh, they hadn't even found at the Court of Appeals yet. I was waiting on the process, and to go to the Court of Appeals, but it was already cleared, and I was already just waiting on paperwork, for my attorneys, Vanessa Parkins, and the rest of the team, Paul Janender, and what's the other one? What's my other attorney? I forget his name. He's here in Dallas. A lot of them work with they work with me, and they stayed on it the whole time. Basically, the whole time I was in jail, I was like, my wife was calling them, and they were staying on it. But
You're waiting on other people.
waiting on other people to push the pen. I stayed.
That's
all it took.
waiting on other people.
Yeah, Gary Udishin is one of my main attorneys that, he broke the barrel on this case because when the Innocent Project in New York, they have so many cases. And then when that came, Gary Udishin, Paul Janender and team, Vanessa Parkins and team. When Vanessa, she said, well, we got a lot going on or whatever. And they pushed this case. I mean, I literally went through the Innocent Project. I think I went through like 9 attorneys in the whole time I was with them. And numerous of law students, probably 20 or 30 law students and paralegals during the course of this. And, my case it was a grandfather case. It's like it was so old. It's one of the oldest cases in the Innocent Project in New York to be resolved. And when it got resolved, it was so many people in higher places that were so happy. Like some of my attorneys are judges now. Some of my law students are attorneys now, and, they were
Some of you
happy.
literally saw their careers transform while waiting on.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Can we pull that picture up? You know what picture I'm talking about. It's the iconic picture where you've got, who are those people on the right and left of you?
Oh, like right here on my shirt.
So it's on your shirt.
Yeah.
So it's on your shirt. Who are those people?
This is my wife.
That's your wife.
And this is my lead attorney.
It's your lead attorney. And where were you in that picture?
Coming out of the jailhouse, coming out of the courtroom.
Where at?
May the 24th, right here in Dallas at Loose Dairy.
And that's when you got the word, like
Frank
officially a judge declared you.
Yeah, actually innocent.
How did you feel in that moment?
Oh, man, I can't describe it to you. I was so freaking happy. It was a day that I just couldn't sleep. I was waiting on it to come.
Yeah.
And I was so happy, like, it's finally happening. But what's so obvious is that after all of these years in prison, I used to dream about that day happening just like it happened. I had dreams, and I said, that's the way it's going to happen. My family going to be there. I even said that I was going to be. I said it, and I don't know. I mean, God is great. But I said I was going to be number 44. Then I tell you that. I told that 3 years ago. I said, I'm going to be number 44. I was the 44th Dallas exoneree. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why 44? What was?
It's
just like a vision. Like
it was a vision to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
that's
my wife,
amazing.
And then out of we thinking of history and doing things like Obama was the 44th president of the United States. So black president came, and I said, oh, number 44. That's why I wear it with pride.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, so
that's amazing how you had that vision and then it came to fruition. Like, I love that picture, you man. When I
was so happy that day.
I know, man. You could just that picture just brings so much joy because I remember I texted you and I was like, hey, do you have a picture that you want me to use on advertisement? Because I always put the advertisement out that people are going to be on the show or whatever.
Right.
And in my mind, I was thinking, I was like, I kind of hope he doesn't have one because I want to use this one. And then when you said, hey, just check Google. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I'm going to use this picture because, like, to me, man, that just says so much. Like, you have 26 years in prison, 33 years total that you had to accept what somebody else said about you.
About me, right.
Police officers,
Yes.
Prosecutors,
Prosecutors.
Public defenders, judges, people who raise their right hand like me and Preston have done,
Right.
people like us, you had to accept, not necessarily accept, but because you did accept it, obviously, but
I didn't.
there was nothing you could do
at
about
the
it.
time. Yeah, it's like being in a straitjacket.
Yeah.
It's like being in a straitjacket with no way out. Yeah. But actually, and then what's so cool about that is that when I was in prison, you know, I have a decent family, a good family, but I guess, you know, when you're out of sight, you're out of mind. I mean, when you're in prison, I was one of those guys who you never really heard from family until the holidays or your birthday.
While you were in prison?
Yes, and I mean, they might think different. Like, I don't know where a lot of people get it from in the family. Like, no, I did mine by myself almost. You know, it was sad, but on the holidays, I mean, I didn't get mail every day. I couldn't go to commissary like I wanted to every week. I worked in the greenhouses in the penitentiary, ate out the gardens, and worked in the kitchen. And like when I got out of prison, I was on a monitor. And my wife, she always said, well, I feel like when you got out, I got locked up. Because that's the way we used to have to.
Because y'all couldn't be around each other.
Well, we couldn't stay together. We could be around each other, what happened, and visit. And
Why couldn't y'all stay together? Was it
because of the sex offender thing? And then the house, a lot of the residential homes, if you're not
kids?
felony, no, I didn't have a kid.
No, I meant like was you had to,
city ordinances.
City
usually,
ordinances
a lot of
and-
the-
Yes, the ordinance won't let you get on their lease to a degree if you got a felony, and sometimes it falls up on the management part of the house or the home.
Can I ask you this? And I don't want to get too personal here. I'm just curious. Did they compensate you?
Oh yeah.
But it didn't come until your official exoneration, right? Is that how that worked?
After the exoneration, like
You officially got it.
days, you in 45 days, I was good.
But I've always said too, like, no amount of money, right?
No
I'm sure you've thought about that. No amount of money
No.
can like somebody says, hey, I'm going to give you, you know, however many $1 million, and that means you're going to lose 33 years of your life.
Right.
Which one do you want?
Yeah,
You know, and it's not one of the things where you say, oh, I'll choose the money. I'm sure you would have much rather have had those years. But one of the questions that I have that I asked Richard, and he answered it very elegantly, was like this journey that you were on. And I've been through some stuff, but it doesn't hold a candle to this. But I look at some of my hardship journeys. I look at them as they happened because of where I am today and what my mission is going forward. And when I asked Richard this, he said, I'm trying to remember correctly, he says, I said, do you think, had this not happened to you, do you think your trajectory would have changed? Like he said, and he responded, he said, I think I would have been successful, but not as impactful. So do you share those same feelings? Like because
yeah, because I share those exact feelings and concept, and I take that to heart because it's personal with me, like it's personal with a lot of exonerees, especially Richard. I probably would have just went and played football and been a ball player and been successful as a ball player. But my role in the community and in the criminal justice system being a vehicle on these type of settings or what have you, I probably wouldn't have that knowledge or even be interested in joining these type of settings. I wouldn't even know about, probably I know about the criminal justice system, but as far as things about wrongful conviction or what have you, that wouldn't have been one of my things. Probably wouldn't have been one of my things. Now, I'm impactful because I know now. Like Richard said, I know now, I would have just been a football player or somebody selling insurance after football, But as far as what I'm doing now in the community, it's like, I wouldn't have never probably took that way right there. So impactful, no, I wouldn't have been, but I am now. If things would have been going like as planned, as God wills, was my success, I would have been successful in that area, but not in the area that have caused me to be in the position that I'm in now. Yeah. And
I want to talk about the Dallas Conviction Integrity Unit.
mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that?
Well,
how do you feel about that program?
I feel like it's a great program. I feel like it's great. Cynthia Garza does a great job, and and she put in a lot of work when it came to me, and I used to ask my attorneys, I got investigated by her and her assistant. So I used to have this thing where it's a matter of trust. I didn't trust the system like I wanted to, because when I said, well, this woman here, she's there and she's a district attorney and she's criminal integrity, whatever. Why is she willing to help me? Is she really trying to help me? And I tossed in my sleep, many days before I even got an interview with her about that. I told my wife, well, babe, I think she's trying to get information to keep me down. But at the same time, I found out that she was been instrumental in me getting exonerated and get to where I needed to be, investigation after investigation, going out in the field, finding the victim, investigating, getting an interpreter. She done the whole 9 yards. She is very good at what she do, and she do it with the heart that she have.
It's the right person in the right place.
In the right place.
Preston and I have talked about that Dallas Conviction Integrity Unit because it's not standard.
In a lot of places.
In a lot of places.
It's not.
And I want to say, I don't want to speak off base, but I'm thinking I remember that Dallas was the first one, wasn't it?
Yes.
I believe it was.
Craig Watkins.
Yes, Craig Watkins. That's right.
He brung about, District Attorney Craig Watkins brung about the criminal integrity.
And why that isn't standard, for the love of Jesus, I don't know why, because it should be standard. And we, him and I can we share that. And I'm just the same with you too, because a lot of cases, man, aren't getting, the numbers are staggering of how many wrongful convictions there are, and there's a lot of cases not getting touched.
Right. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
I agree that that type of unit or function within our system should be standard and required. But you know what I think that makes more sense, that should be standard, and the way that we get introduced into this field and the way we were trained is when we're looking at investigations, when we're working cases, if you take the approach and work just as hard to prove that somebody's innocent.
Exactly.
Because here's the thing. If somebody's guilty, if somebody did the crime, you're not going to be able to prove, in my opinion, it would be, it's much harder to prove somebody's innocent than it is to prove that somebody's guilty if they're guilty. So and that's a culture mentality thing, and I think it goes back, law enforcement. I can't speak so much from, the prosecutor's perspective, just because I don't have a whole lot of exposure to that. Just from the stories that I hear, my interactions, thus far in my career, it's listening to your story is just it's moving in multiple ways. One, I always go back to, like, there's things that you're saying about your life, and I think society, like, people want us to be so divided, and they work, certain people work so hard to divide us. And if you're, whatever, on the spiritual side or faith-based side, you could look at that as, we're always working against evil. I think it's different now because I think there's so much else at play that's been happening for decades and generations, and honestly, probably since the inception of our country and what we know, right? So we always think that we're so different, but we're not. We're not. You were 19 years old and when you had your first daughter?
I was 15.
No, he was.
15.
She was like almost 4.
Yeah. She's almost 4.
So, I'm over here listening to your story, and you tell me that you're 19 when all this is happening, and I'm thinking, when I was 19, I just found out that I was about to have my first child, unplanned, right? And that was, for me, on my story and my life, that was a turning point for me. That honestly, it unraveled the next 3 or 4 years of my life into some really troubling times for me, right? So I'm sitting here thinking, like, 19, and then 19, and then there's just so much that I think that if we do what we're doing right now, we take the time to just sit here and talk and have a conversation and be vulnerable with each other and listen and build that trust. We really see how much that we're really not, like, we're more similar than we are different. Right. But that's not the way society sees it or wants it to be that way, because in my opinion, I have multiple opinions on why that is. I think a lot of it has to do with, I think there's a war on your wealth class. Like, people want that division. I think about that when, you were talking about South Dallas and the community and the struggles, and it's no secret that that day, I'm sure that racism played a whole lot more than it does today, right? But we still face that battle. I think in any environment, in any profession, you're going to face those battles. I would like to think that, or at least my interactions with the people that I work with and I know, the judgment on somebody because of their race isn't so much the issue as it is now more of like what's your standard of living, what's your wealth status,
right?
Yeah. And it's so everything to me, it seems like it's so fueled on money, right? And greed. And that's what our society's come to, and in my opinion, like, I think that's a huge issue in law enforcement and the criminal justice system. It's so corrupted with greed and money. Everything comes down to a dollar factor, and somebody's always looking to make theirs,
exactly,
right? And somebody's always looking to save theirs. So when you were talking about, you spent so many years waiting just on somebody to just sign a piece of paper. Right. That came down to at the end of the day, that came down to money and funding. Somebody was trying to save theirs where we might not need to save the money there in the budget. Maybe we need to put more money in the clerical side to hire people to do clerical processes and stay on top of these things, right? But we don't. We focus our spending on. There's just so many. When you first started telling your story, I was sitting here listening to it, and you're describing the things that the officers did. And, it's hard. I'll be honest. I've been a cop since breakfast. I was telling you that about before the show, right? That's something I always say is that I've just been a cop since breakfast. I'm just a baby cop. Like right. I don't have a ton of years on the job, and I don't have all that experience and knowledge sometimes to know how we used to do things because I'm still in a phase of my career where I'm always learning how we're supposed to do things and what we're supposed to do. So I can't relate so much to what the practice was then. Was that the normal practice? Was it normal procedure, the way they handled that? I would like to think that we've improved it now on some of the DNA stuff and normal procedures and protocols that we have in place when we start investigating sexual assaults. Obviously, we fail somewhere. And then we get into and then you get further into your story, and I'm sitting here thinking, but that I think that we still make decisions or in certain aspects.
Let me say, procedurally, I think we've improved.
I do think so.
When it comes to the heart and the culture, which the culture is surrounded by the heart, we have not improved very much.
No, not in law enforcement.
Yeah, that's procedurally, yes. They don't do things like that anymore. They don't just pull up in a squad car and say, "Hey, take a look."
It was foreign language to me.
Yeah,
some of the things Some of the things you were saying, I'm like, I've never heard of this in my life.
Yeah, we used to do it, man.
This is the shit I see on TV. Excuse my language. I try to remember this is family friendly, and then I sometimes I just get a little passionate, But I'm like, what? Yeah, they would do that?
Yeah, that's what we used to do. It's true story, man. Yeah, and so I say procedurally we've improved, but when it comes to the heart, generationally, because you talk about racism, socioeconomical status, like we haven't.
I don't think we have. But I could say that as society as a whole. Right now, and then right now, we're living in some really weird times.
Sure.
Right? Like, there's so much going on, and I think it comes down to, I think as humans, right, just individuals, you take everything else away. You rip everything else apart. Your race, your sexual orientation, who you love, what church you go to, what you believe in, what your aspirations are in life. You strip all that away. I think that we all look like we're designed. We look towards something. Give me something. Give me something to believe in. Give me a direction to go. Give me a purpose, right? I think that we all do that. And I think that that's currently where we're lost. It's because we have so many things coming in and like when you have that missing, you're going to be kind of like when you were describing the community and the influence, like you have to have those good influences because when it's not there, because we're human, because we are who we are, we're going to grasp on the first thing that extends its arm out to us, whether it's right or wrong, whether it's going to be a good influence or a bad influence. That's what we're going to grasp. And then until somebody shakes us and wakes us up and says, don't do that, we're going to continue to make the same mistakes. That's why I always go back to it's a generational thing when we look at the issues in law enforcement and the criminal justice system. It's until somebody takes the whole thing and just shakes it and said, you have been doing the same thing, getting the same results, you might change it. You might tweak it a little bit here, tweak it a little bit there. We might change it and adapt it to who's currently holding political positions in the country, or what the latest fad is, or what the latest the trend or whatever it may be. Like we may change it just a little bit, but I'm talking somebody's going to have to shake this thing.
But listen, you're right, because same results, all these, so many years, same results. Look how many of these exoneration cases starts with what?
It starts
with the police.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're the first contact.
So that's the first contact. And then it moves on. They all most of the exoneration stories that I've heard start with the police. Same thing. You go over to the prosecution side. They give you a public defender because nobody has $40,000 or $50,000 to freaking spend on an attorney. And they offer you a plea deal. And even if somebody doesn't take the plea deal, you go to trial, and it's like, look at this guy, look at what his history is,
That's another thing.
And it's the same thing. The police make a mistake. The prosecution side doesn't care. They're just looking for a stat. And you're right. Nobody is shaking that up. It's always the same exact thing with every one of these cases.
And the thing about it is it's what it's costing. We talked about. I made a similar connection last week when we were looking at the that use of force, right? And I said, what these things are costing, whether it's right or whether somebody's in the right or somebody's in the wrong, what it's costing is somebody's life.
It's cost somebody's life.
You're still here with us today, breathing. And now you're moving forward in your life, but it cost you so many years. So I think until we start with realizing that everything we do, every decision we make in this profession and in this system is affecting somebody's life, and that holds value, because right now it doesn't hold value.
No,
Man,
because
I'd be discouraged that this thing
it's like I told you,
can't change.
We don't get this kind of training. When I met Richard at Kale, there were people there from the Illinois Innocent Project. One of them was a former cop of 20-something years, and he was putting on training for a room full of cops. And every one of us in that room, and there was probably 50 of us, we all said, this is the first time we've ever sat down and seen these stats. Somebody's put this up in front of us. And I had so much respect for Mark Beach from Illinois Innocent Project, because he was a cop. And I looked at him and I was like, I want to do what you're doing. Mm-hmm. I want to go to these places and put these trainings on for these people, because and I've said this 1,000 times and I keep saying it. You can read a headline, you're scrolling your Facebook news feed and you see, so-and-so exonerated. I would say most people see it. They see a headline or, in the newspaper, whatever, did 33 years and like, oh man, that sucks. And then keep scrolling. Let's see what's the next news piece that I'm going to look at. Kim Kardashian's got, bigger butt or whatever. Like, it's like, man, you sitting here and us being able to bring you on and present you to our audience, which I have a large law enforcement following, and you're not a headline. You're a real person. I can reach out and touch you and just, like, I was trying my best, man, to not, like, I'm kind of an emotional guy. I can't help it. But talking about your kids and just like, dude, this is a real thing that happens to real people.
Yes.
And it starts with people like us, and it's so important. But I have a question for you. And we've kind of touched on it, but what, in your opinion, who cares if anybody disagrees, but in your opinion, because I'm going to highly respect and value what you say because you've been through this, but in your opinion, what can you think? What could we do? Let's just talk law enforcement because that was your first interaction. What can law enforcement do, you think, to improve, just on the line level of being able to prevent these outcomes?
Short term and long term, I would say what y'all doing is great. This is we spoke a little bit earlier. This is my first interaction with law enforcement outside of being, in the investigation of my innocent in the case, speaking to law enforcement, maybe an investigator, what have you. But I never spoke with law enforcement as field officers or peace officers on the term of wrongful conviction. It starts with what y'all doing now. I think that it should be, that training should be legislative.
I agree with that.
And I was
Working on it.
To you, what you said, you was going to
Working on it.
You're gonna be the first one at the door when he start, and that's something that I hope that me and the other exonerees can come and support as well. But the training is the most needed thing. It should be legislative, and it should be all around the country. And due process, should be one of the first things that the officers is ordained to go by in making an arrest or what have you. And I think that training should be something that an officer has to do 3 or 4 times a year in order to keep that, embedded in them and learned. Because it's got to be a second nature when you're in law enforcement. This type of thing, doing the right thing. Why are you here? Why am I an officer? What did I get out here every day and do?
What is your why?
Yeah, why? Or why am I here? Why am I doing this? But it has to be taught that you have to do the right thing regardless of race, religion, creed, wealth, communities. It goes back to all the way down to, like, you made a good point. It's statute on how in the years and coming up that law enforcement, they ordain their tactics by communities. Meaning when they go into a community, if they stereotype this community as poverty and selling dope. These guys here, they burglarize. These guys here, they doing prostitution things. These guys here, they doing white-collar crimes or what have you. So, need to break that cycle.
Stop stereotyping people just because you're in South Dallas or just because you're in Highland Park or Las Colinas or Frisco. Just because you're in these certain areas doesn't, you're absolutely right.
Or because you've made a mistake.
Or because you made a mistake.
In your past.
In your past.
Mistakes don't define.
Yeah.
Mistakes don't define you.
That's right.
And I think that's a key.
Yeah.
And I
because the second chance thing is one of the great, because you do have law enforcement that is proactive and, like, for instance, they have programs for, There's very few programs. That's why I love Richard programs so much.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That was one of my questions that I want to ask before we get off here because I don't want to make anybody mad. How did you link up with Richard? Was it just because y'all were on Cofield together.
We were on Cofield
So how
together.
did you, he started Miles of, I don't know when he was exonerated in, I want to say, was his 08? I think it was
08, yeah.
So 08.
Yes.
So you still did some years. Like, how did you link up? And then you went through his program.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to talk about that because I love what he's doing with Miles of Freedom because obviously you're a success story from that.
Right.
So talk about how y'all linked up with that.
Well, personally, I have, not in the law library when Richard has been there in prison, what have you, and then we never had really vague conversation or nothing like that. I just remember, and Benjamin Spencer was there to give, a word to the right in the law library with directives on, who needed help here and there. On the unit, he was known for being like on TV for being wrongful convicted or what have you when I came there. So it was a lot of us waiting on to get exonerated on Cofield, and we went to other places and came back. Like I said, when I came back, Richard was gone. But Christina Hashler was one of my biggest supporters, advocates for my innocent, besides the Innocent Project and attorneys. She had a thing called Dallas Can Do Better. And 8 years of my time, when I came back in 2008, when she didn't even know me, I didn't even know she was following my case. And I know she was with Ben Spencer when she said, I want to come and see you, and I want to be one of your biggest supporters. We're going to get through this, this, and that, this, and that. And I said, okay, well, I didn't even know her. So I put on my visit list, and she came to see me. And she stood by my side and supported me and numerous of guys in prison for years, sending us newspapers, making sure we had the necessary means as far as hygiene with funds or what have you to be able to do what we can do in prison. But when I got out, and I heard Richard program through the prison system through to somebody else on pre-release. But when I got out, I had a monitor on. And when I mentioned Miles of Freedom, that was besides going to the mosque, that was the second place that they would allow me to go. Miles of Freedom, yeah, you can go there. I mean, because you go in there and they was resourceful. I mean, I learned a lot by going. I mean, it was on Fridays, and I was able to get out on my monitors. When I put Miles of Freedom on, I'm able to go, and it was resourceful. It had all the means to help a guy getting out of prison, getting your ID card, doing your resumes, learning how to fill out applications, learn how to present yourself in the interview. And, it went on and on, computer literacy, they taught you all. Then you had a case manager to work with you. Then they, it was just, it was competitive compared to what I was used to in prison. Is like, they challenge you,
Yeah.
like you want to do something with yourself. Here's the resources. So I went there and I was able to go there, and I stayed there, Richard a while before I got on the lawn crew. I started managing. I worked on Richard's lawn crew. Then I started being the lawn crew manager there. And then I started my own company while I was working another job at Nogales Food Produce. I worked there, and then I worked there at nighttime, and I worked with Richard during the daytime. And, the program is awesome. It just done so much for me. Like, and I sent guys there right today. I sent 2 probation officers that was at my farm the other day. Me and one of my business partners sent them to Miles of Freedom because they looking for work for guys that's on probation, and they're also looking for them to do community service and be able to get employment possibly, because Miles of Freedom, they dress you out and put you on the bus and in the van. They take you to job sites where you can fill out the application to job fairs or what have you. Because so I gave them that directive.
What is the system doing?
Not much.
They're not doing nothing. They're just
much.
Releasing these guys saying, hey, you are, here you go. You've been locked up for 26 years. Go out there and figure it out.
Yeah.
You have no money. Yeah. Maybe your family's still alive. Yeah. Maybe you still got some friends.
Right.
And
it don't always work.
And everything is against you. How can you succeed? And that's why I freaking love what Richard is doing, because you are a product of that of that organization.
I am, yeah.
And I love it, man. I love to see your smile when you talk about it. I love to hear Richard talk about it. And I'm so glad, man, that I'm a big believer, say this a lot, but in things happening for a reason.
Right.
And I think things happen for a reason to lead you to Miles of Freedom, because
yes.
What about all these guys that are getting out and they're not?
They're not. Yeah, Richard is the organization is known throughout the walls of prison, and that's a blessing. But Richard is a personal friend of mine, and as an exoneree, it's mentorship going on with me.
Yeah.
You know, and it's personal. You know, I try to talk to Rich as much as possible. You know, he mentored me in a lot of things that I'm going through, especially after getting exonerated. And you can get overwhelmed, you know. I mean, the first 90 days of an exoneree, like Richard says, you're going to kind of like be like overwhelmed. But once you get your row out, you settle down a little bit and you think about life.
Yeah.
And I tell my wife this every day, like, I get out and I just ride. You know, since the exoneration, I just get out and I just ride. I'm free. I'm free of all, you know, restraints, you know.
Yeah, man.
Because I wasn't free on parole, you know. I mean, all you're doing is getting released and you still have stipulations, you know. And I try to be, you know, I'm always like humble in my disposition when it comes to my situation. I can repeat it and say it again. I had experienced some things with, you know, going through my transition on getting exonerated. Like in 2008, you know, they sent me back to prison.
It's like dangling on a carrot.
Yeah, and then in 2012, I went there and took a polygraph, and they sent me back to prison because I failed it. And some of those same people that was in office then, up under Craig Watkins, and I don't hold bitter with it, some of those same people coming to exonerations now that knocked me down and sent me back to prison have yet to stand before me and say, congratulations, Tyrone Day. And I see those people all the time. I tell my wife all the time, he sent me back in 2008. It's the same guy that's here now that's on Innocent Project boards and things of this nature. He have yet to step to me and say, Mr. Day, I was wrong. Or Mr. Day, we made a mistake. We should have went a little further with your case. They never stepped. They walk right on by me like I don't exist. But that did happen. I don't mention names, but it did happen.
Right.
You know. And one thing that happened in the Centilio case is that the police department chief police came down. And he came down, I was saying, well, maybe he came down because they made an arrest on his case. Remember, his case was the first case that they actually made an arrest on the actual perpetrator. But he came down on behalf of the police department and spoke for Santilio. But in my case, he didn't come down and speak on behalf of the police department and say, well, even though I wasn't here at the time, my department was wrong, this happened, or what have you. He didn't do that.
And I feel like, my gosh, we got to hurry because we're running out of time. But I feel like police chiefs, even if they were a baby at the time,
Yeah.
you should come
Yeah.
as a representation of that department and say, look,
Exactly.
you know, this is what we don't want to have. We stand against this, and we want to, you know, we want to better our department.
Mm-hmm.
We congratulate you on your exoneration, and we are in your corner anytime you need us. I feel like that's what should happen.
That's the right thing.
That's the right thing.
Yes, sir.
Would be. I think that goes back to culture.
Yeah.
And we're deeply rooted in a culture where we avoid being vulnerable. And that would require being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I will say, you know, since we're ending, I just want to, for me, I want to end with this. You know, before the show, we got a minute to chat just a little bit, and I told you that, you know, before Justin started doing this, I had never really seen this side of it, right? I'd never really seen or taken a good look at the prison system, the wrongful convictions, and how these things can impact people's lives, right? Because I have been. He gets on to me all the time because I feel personally like I have this personal mission, like it's a fight that I'm not willing to lose, and it's to make a change in our profession. And so I've heard Richard's story, but sitting here tonight, listening to you hear it, and sitting next to you,
Does something different, doesn't it?
it's I will say it's been emotional.
Yeah.
And it's been moving. in a way that will only, I think, strive me to do better
Right.
at pursuing what we want to do and seeing a different side of it. We have to focus on the whole thing, and we do need to look at where we've gotten it wrong, and we need to listen. And this training,
It's very much needed.
think if just this couple hours, how it's impacted me. I'm current full-time law enforcement, and this 2 hours has impacted me where I will do my job differently. I will take a moment to pause at certain times. I think that if we did that and it was mandated and we did it on a large scale.
Yeah.
I had spoken Plano a few months when Richard was out there. I think I spoke, and one of the things that in line with what you're saying is that what both of y'all are doing is that for the law enforcement, the field officers, and everybody that's in criminal justice, as far as the attorneys and public defenders, everybody who was there. My thing is that when you have a person that gets arrested for a crime, we are dependent. I was one of the people who was dependent on my public defender. I was dependent on the judge to do the right thing. I was dependent on the investigator maybe to come up with something, what have you. So when we petition the courts or when you arrest somebody, what have you, make sure that you're doing the right thing. Make sure the evidence is turned in correctly, because the person becomes dependent on you to do the right thing as far as law enforcement. That's a pledge that you made as law enforcement. And when you locked up, you're locked up. We are dependent on. We became dependent as an innocent person. I was dependent on law enforcement to do the right thing, and that's one of the things. And I told my man, it was so ironic that Richard's daddy was in the Air Force, and my dad was in the Air Force. My dad told me they're going to do the right thing, son. 2 days after I got arrested, like Richard's dad was telling him, they're going to do,
Because that's what you should expect.
That's what you should expect.
That's what you should expect, and that's what you should get.
Right. That's the expectations. Correct. And I want everybody at Kell to know that this is what we look forward to. I mean, you can arrest somebody and they can call you 10 years later to attest to something that was evidence that may was lost, but they have to, if you can remember, they only might go on your word to turn this case over. So we got to get it right. It starts with the field, like you say, but that training is very much needed. People are dependent on you. I hear guys all the time where they say, my arresting officer, they waiting on to see can they find my arresting officer, and this guy's case is 20 years old. Maybe he'll remember, maybe he's still in good health where he can remember what happened that night, or they lost all the paperwork to this case. They lost the evidence. They don't know what's going on with it. Can you remember what happened this night? My attorney didn't remember anything, and he died in the process of my whole investigation.
Wow.
That was happening. So we depended. We remember that it's like being a person that's locked up. If you have anything to do with, remember they have become a dependent of our action. Your actions or what have you. That's what it is. They're dependents. So you have to make sure that you do the right thing.
We're out of time, guys. We got to wrap it up. But listen, thank you for coming. Everybody that's listening to this, especially if you're law enforcement on the prosecution side, we do this for this very reason. Like he said, these people have entrusted us to do what we are supposed to do. And that's why it's important for Failing Justice's mission to continue moving forward and for the word to continue to get spread, because, again, to my knowledge, nobody's doing this. So it starts here. Thank you, Tyrone, for being here.
Thank y'all for doing what y'all doing.
Wonderful story, impactful story, and I would be not a good person. Your wife's not on camera, but I gotta mention her. Miss Terry Day is in the room. She's not on camera, but she's here for your support, and I love that she is here. Very sweet lady from New Orleans that is sitting over here listening to us, and I'm so glad to have her here as well.
Right.
Always good to have my buddy Preston here. We got to wrap it up, guys.
Hope we meet again.
But thank you for joining the show tonight. And remember to follow us on all of our platforms at Failing One Justice. We've changed our website. It's just failingjustice.org. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers, and look forward to another show next week. And you guys have a good night.
All right.
This is Failing Justice.